Hello, welcome back. Now, I'm not going to bore you too much with the Kemi, Badenoch, Nigel Farage row, I promise, but there are now calls for the Tories and Reform to stop the squabbling and make a New Year pledge to work together to get rid of this Labour government. That was exacerbated overnight with a bombshell new mega poll that showed Labour would lose nearly 200 seats if there was a general election called today. Constituency by constituency analysis points to a hung parliament with huge gains by Reform and 7 cabinet members losing seats, including Angela Rayner. Labour's loveless landslide in July would be dramatically butchered, with Keir Starmer's comrades losing 87 seats to the Conservatives and 67 to Reform. So here's the final seat count from that More in Common poll, which quizzed 11,000 people. Labour would win 228 seats, the Conservatives 222 and Reform 72. 7 cabinet ministers, as I said, would lose their seats, 6 of them to Reform, with Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, losing Ilford North to an independent candidate. Others losing to Reform would include, as I said, Deputy PM Angela Rayner, the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, the Defence Secretary John Healey, Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, and the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson and the Business Sec Jonathan Reynolds. So, panel, welcome back. Look, I don't want to talk about the Kemi Nigel row too much, but do we need, or do they need rather, in light of this poll, Labour appearing to be on the ropes, do they need to sort their differences out and focus on holding this government to account? Neil?
I think they will get together in time, and I think they'll come to some sort of a deal, but I don't think yet. And I think what we've got to do now is, like you said, in Parliament, then Kemi has got to get to grips with Keir Starmer, because, I mean, I think the story, to be honest with you, in some ways, is not just about Reform and the Tories. It's about the way that, Keir Starmer got in with only 34% of people supporting the Labour Party, and now that's down to about 25%. And I think it must be hugely worrying for a Prime Minister who's only just got into power. And also, he overdid, how terrible things are, because actually people start to believe him. And, of course, economies are fragile things. And when people stop spending, stop investing, then you have a budget where they tax every business known to man. Then they wonder why they've got no growth and why nobody's got any confidence. So they've actually sort of spun themselves in a web that I don't see they can get themselves out of easily, because the economy's not going to pick up, and unfortunately I think people just don't really see much in Keir Starmer at all.
Yeah, indeed. And markets, as we know, the economy is built on sentiment, and when you talk the country down for so long and they lead up to a pretty harsh budget, I mean, what the hell do you expect is going to happen? Charlotte, what did you make of this row between Kemi and Nigel? It all seems a bit silly, but my point yesterday was that actually it shows perhaps maybe a character flaw of judgment on Kemi's behalf anyway, because the country, whether you're a Conservative supporter, a Reform supporter, a Lib Dem, whoever, a Green, we need serious opposition in the country, and it all just seems a bit silly when they're rowing about membership numbers. So do you think they need to come together and forget about it?
I don't think they need to formally do it, but what Ed Davey and Keir Starmer did in the build-up to the election in the summer was they kind of informally just started agreeing with each other, and in terms of pushing against the Tories. So all Kemi needs to do, really, is just focus on the Labour government. Just for the next 4 years, just slowly find loopholes and holes and push against it. But there's no point in kind of fighting with Farage. It's a waste of her time. And actually...
And letting Starmer off the hook.
And letting Starmer off the hook.
In the meantime,
she could even unilaterally create an electoral pact by just being nice, vaguely, about Farage. Because actually, he's a bit of an old charmer. He'll respond quite well to that. And then they can just focus both of their energy on taking down Starmer. And what that mega poll shows is that actually Reform is quite a lot... They're neck and neck, Labour and Conservatives, but Reform's quite far behind. So she doesn't need to worry about Farage. She should turn her attention to Starmer and actually be a bit, why not compliment Farage every now and again? They're quite aligned on some issues. So,
Susie, as the Labour aficionado here, what do you think Sir Keir Starmer's thinking of this row between Reform and the Tories?
I mean, I don't know. I suppose, I mean, look, I think he's got lots of other things to be focusing on. He's running the country, isn't he? So, I mean, look, I kind of agree. I think the Conservatives you know, rightly should be concerned about reform and Nigel Farage because, you know, as we know, he's very good at what he does. And there's a lot of people in this country that think he's a man of the people and think that he's got his finger on the pulse and whatnot. And so I think it's right that, you know, she does have concern about him. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem wise to me. Ultimately, we are the ones in government. I don't think she's also doing that, like Prime Minister's questions. I mean, I don't like obsessively watch Kemi Badenoch, but I don't feel like she's doing a particularly good job at Prime Minister's questions. And not that I want her to, you know.
I think that's the general consensus. I mean, she tried to take him to task on immigration the other day, and she was absolutely schooled because Keir Starmer just said, "You're a fine one to talk about immigration, Tories." What about this poll, Susie, the mega poll? You're losing 200 seats, and if indeed the Tories and Reform did, you know, get together and put their differences aside, they could have a coalition government.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this poll, I think it's what is it? It's 5 months off a general election, 4.5 months to the, I'm sorry, 4.5 years to the next general election. I don't really particularly feel like it's that relevant. I think there's so much that's going to happen in the next 4.5 years. The fact is we were dealt a difficult hand with a difficult 5 months. Things are going to look very different in a year's time.
A difficult hand, can I ask?
Well, in every section of this country, from prisons being overcrowded to the NHS being in a mess, to sewage being pumped into our rivers, to a house building crisis, the potholes in the road, can't find anything good to say about the Tories. Hence why, you know, the British people, you know, decided, you know, quite assuredly that they didn't want a Tory government.
But what have you done since you've come in? You've put £25 billion worth of tax on business. You've actually targeted every private business in the country. Nobody's investing anymore because they're putting aside...
What about the £63 billion pledge?
And so, therefore, you can't build an economy on public sector alone. And you seem to think that you've decided that, you know, socialism at last will work. Well, I thought socialism had been...
Just so you know, I don't describe...
Socialism because you're destroying the goose that lays the golden egg, that actually produces the money to pay for the public sector.
We've got 63 billion.
The economy.
We've got £63 billion pledged of investment into this country. You know, we've been in 5 months.
Charlotte, what are you going to say?
5 months.
To say the mega poll shows that, you know, it's actually going really, really badly for Starmer. So even though it's irrelevant, which is, I kind of agree that we're 4 years off an election, so it's a kind of crazy time to mega poll. But what it does show is that only 6 months after being elected, Keir Starmer is really struggling in the polls, and you know, he's practically neck and neck with the Conservatives again. It's only been 6 months.
Yeah, but what I would say on that is, you know, they're making a lot of difficult decisions now. But the fact is when we start building those homes, when we start turning around schools, when we start bringing down the waiting list, you know, when people stop having sewage pumped into their rivers, you know, all these different things. And the economy, as I say, is never just about numbers. It's also about how people feel.
Sorry, you've got to create wealth in order to spend wealth.
Absolutely.
And all this government's done since it's got into power is to squeeze the private sector, which is creating the wealth. What you do if you want to grow the economy, you actually cut taxes in order for it to go forward.
Don't badmouth the economy.
And don't because you see, an economy is a very fragile beast, and if you keep on at people how terrible it is, stop spending, stop investing, and it all shrinks.
Susie,
and your economy's shrinking, you won't have the money to spend.
Let's see where we are in a few years' time.
I'll look forward to it, because I rather fear, politics aside, that this country is going to go downhill fast.
Way.
And it's all due to the new Chancellor. I'm sorry. That's where it is.
As I said to Michael Pack, the Wall Street Journal documentary maker, 10-year gilt yields now 4.6%, much higher than when Liz Truss was ousted. So why isn't Rachel Reeves out on her backside?
Exactly.
Susie, I was about to call you Lucy. Susie, can I just say, you said that they inherited a massive mess. Labour inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7. Interest rates falling, mortgages coming down, energy bills coming down, so you didn't inherit that.
I'm sorry, let's just be really clear. There's a reason why the British public across this country voted to get the Tories out. Because on housing, I'm going to speak on housing, on education, on the NHS, on immigration, which trebled under your lot, in every single sphere that you can look at. There was nowhere to look where there was any kind of success. And what I would say would
with
say
inflation.
£63 billion that's been invested, that has been pledged since Keir Starmer's come in. 5 months in, you can't mark a paper 5 months in. Let's see where we are. I'm sorry, it takes a long time to turn this great ship that is the UK government, the UK country around.
Raise it during the whole general election, but once you've spent over £300 billion on COVID, rightly or wrongly, you are going to get inflation. The whole of Europe, the whole of the world had inflation. You can't actually lay that just at the Tories.
The best days of this nation are coming. Best days.
We got inflation down by the time you wanted the power.
The best days of the UK are coming.
Enough. Charlotte, would you like some earmuffs?
Yeah.
I'll get a producer to bring you some in.
I've got PTSD already.
For you.
Yeah,
Right,
I'm sorry you're suffering, Charlotte. We'll try and make sure you don't suffer so much.
OK, thank you. We're going to move on.